Good afternoon. Welcome to the Global Digital Policy Masterclass free preview webinar. My name is Alex Burnett and I'm with the Localization Institute. I'm thrilled to be here and be joined today by Kristina Podnar, our instructor for the course. Kristina, welcome. How are you today?
Hi, Alex. Thanks for having me. Really excited to be here today.
You bet. Thanks for joining. I'd just like to let everyone know that today's webinar is being recorded. We will publish this to the course masterclass webpage after the fact, so you can go back and review this later on at your leisure. Want to mention that we have a new fall enrollment period that is open right now. Our first session is scheduled to start on November 5th. So if you're interested in signing up, please feel free to go ahead and register on the course webpage. You still got a couple weeks. If you have any questions about the course at all, please don't hesitate to email me at alex@localizationinstitute.com. I'd be happy to get you some answers as quickly as possible. Kristina, I would like to, without further ado, turn it over to you, and let's go ahead and learn more about the Global Digital Policy Masterclass.
Well, thanks so much, Alex. You know, it's really funny. I'm a little bit giddy because I'm really excited. If you can't tell, I like to geek out on digital policies. And there's a reason for that. I feel like they make everybody's life easier. And so I'm very delighted that we're partnering on this masterclass together and excited for everybody else joining us on the journey.
Well, thanks. And without further ado, let's jump in.
Great. So let's kind of talk about, why even talk about global policies? Why should you today be thinking about joining this masterclass, and what does this really mean? And so I like to always take a step back and consider where we were without digital policies and how we've gotten to the world today where most organizations and most individuals who are involved in marketing or even in content localization can't live without policies any longer. And if we kind of take that time capsule back in time and look back to like the 1980s, late 1980s, early 1990s, we saw the kind of the beginning of the web, right? A lot of really cool, innovative things happening. I know I worked for a startup where we did really crazy and innovative things. And it was really fun because we were pushing the boundaries. We were creating brand new websites for nonprofits to do online fundraising for the first time, which sounds great, but we were also doing some crazy things like passing credit card information through unencrypted channels. Gosh, that's a risk. And we didn't really become so aware of the risk until the first data breaches started to happen. And it's the same thing with all of these other channels. As we started to develop, Google came onto the scene in 1998, we became increasingly aware of SEO and the meaning of search engine optimization. Of course, everybody can't look away from the social media kind of disasters that we're seeing today, but those date back to 2004 when social media came onto the scene. And without policies, which is just a fancy way of saying guardrails, we ended up doing really, really interesting things inside of organizations, right? Social media allows you to reach people like you've never reached them before. But it also presents challenges, it also presents risks, and it actually has a lot of perils that you might not be thinking about. Things like brand safety. What does your brand mean to your customers if it gets tarnished because of something that happens negatively on Facebook? If you end up showing your content, perhaps running after an important or even a detrimental YouTube video or promotion, what is that going to do to you? So between sort of that late 1980s, early 1990s to today, what we've come to find out is that there's a lot of mines in this minefield called the digital space, whether it's your website, whether it's your social media channels, whether it's your mobile applications, if you're moving into machine language translation, artificial intelligence and predictive analytics, whatever space you're in, there are so many risks and there's also opportunities. The good news is that you want to balance those out. You want to be able to put guardrails in place that allow you and everybody inside of your organization to be as innovative and as free as possible, to do really great things within this framework that you've created that's safe. But you also want to have those guardrails so that people don't take it too far. They don't do something that might be illegal or perhaps against regulations, like some of the newer data regulations that you've seen out there, like CCPA or GDPR. right? So you want to make sure that you're compliant with those legal and regulatory aspects, but also that you're taking full advantage of digital. And for every hour or every euro that you invest into your digital presence, you want to make sure that you actually have a good rate of return. And you can only do that when there's a balance between those risks and opportunities. And that's really what global policies are all about. If you can't tell, I'm really excited about global policies because here's the thing. When we start talking about localization, it gets even more complex. You might be thinking about things like, oh, you know what, Kristina, somebody at my headquarters is worrying about brand safety. Maybe somebody else is worrying about the IT stack, including the content management system that you're sitting on top of. But there's this natural tension, and it's a real thing. I see it every day with the clients that I work with. There's a natural tension that happens between headquarters and local markets. Every time we go into a local market, there are risks. There's risks that somebody from headquarters is going to provide imagery or content to be localized that isn't appropriate necessarily for the local market. Or it might be the case that the local market develops something that's awesome, but at headquarters or in a different market, nobody ever hears about it. And so you forego all of these really great opportunities for sharing content, reuse of content, and leveraging what are lessons learned across a global marketplace. And so this tension is very real, and that's where governance and policies come in, right? They actually help you solve that tension in terms of finding a nice balance, having clear rules of engagement, and understanding who gets to make decisions around what and when. So that again points us back to policies. They are guardrails. They point out what you can't do, what you should always do, and what you should never do. And that's really helpful because when all of us together know exactly the rules of the game, we can play the game super fast and we can win most of the time, if not all of the time. But we can't do that if the team is uncoordinated and if we don't have that playbook. So if you're one of those people, this class is for you. And that's why we decided to establish this masterclass. What we really wanted to do was look across the gamut of the type of people that I tend to work with day in and day out and share that knowledge with everybody. Because you don't have to necessarily hire a consultant. You're smart enough, you're competent enough, but what you need is the knowledge around digital policies to do this on your own. So you might be kind of wondering still, but is this really for me? You know, where do you really see this playing? Well, I see this playing out every single day. Actually, maybe not on Sunday sometimes when I take a break, but otherwise every day I interact with organizations that have a situation where maybe there's a two-person marketing team in Bangladesh and they're trying to understand how do they cover all of the marketing criteria they have and how do they meet the sales predictions that they committed to with the fact that they only have a two-person marketing team, and how do they take global content or maybe even use some of the content from a different country and make it appropriate for their marketplace so they can save a little bit of money, make a big impact, and meet their goals. Or perhaps you're part of an organization, or maybe you're even a CIO of a small organization. And what you see is a multinational organization, and each locale is looking to use their own tools and their own process. And you're thinking to yourself, oh, I have to write the check for that. It doesn't scale. Policies help you. And policies help you if you're a global head of marketing and you're trying to figure out how do you get everybody harmonized around the things that should be done in harmony. Not everything has to be done in harmony, but there are certain things that you actually can get done and done better if you are on brand, on point, if there's a specific tune that everybody across the globe is playing so that ultimately we're that nicely harmonized orchestra. But again, you might be that person and you're trying to figure out how do you get everybody on the same page. Well, policies help you there as well. Maybe you're a content writer who's trying to figure out how do you get everybody to translate a specific set of content and get to that really, really core message, regardless of the local spin that's being put on it. Policies help there as well, as do two marketers sitting across the globe from each other, doing completely different things and working at cross purposes. It's helpful to understand, is it really at cross purposes, or is it because your local market needs are unique? We don't know any of that when we're looking at the whole without policies in place and understanding, again, who can do what, who should always do what, and who should never do some other things. And that's what policies do. They're those guardrails that keep you safe. They define what you ought to do and not do, and they make sure that you can do it faster and get things done in a more efficient and effective way. So right about now, you might be saying, oh, that sounds really boring. I'm not sure if I want to do policy. Well, let me tell you, policy gets more exciting the more you do it. Day in and day out, I see organizations that benefit tremendously from having policies in place. And whether you're sitting at a headquarters role and you actually have authority for policies around the globe, or if you're just sitting in by yourself in a local marketplace, policies can help you. And this masterclass is intended to help you define the set of policies that you need. Now, we're not talking about some shelfware, right? Documentation that you're going to create and put on your shelf somewhere, or maybe put on your intranet that nobody's ever going to look at again. We're not going to do check the box exercises in this masterclass. We're actually in this class together to understand and develop the policies that you specifically need. So 3 sessions, here's how we're going to get the work done. In the first session, we're going to really talk about policy localization and why does it matter to have local policies? Why can't we just do a one-size-fits-all? Whether it's a privacy statement that's going on your website, or perhaps it's a data breach policy that tells you what to do internally and how marketing has to work with IT, or perhaps it goes back to user-generated content and when it's okay to pull down some post or not off of a social media channel. All of that needs to be addressed at some level. And if it's missing in your organization, you're exposing yourself to those perils and those risks that I talked about earlier on. It could mean fines. It could mean a bad example for your brand. It could mean customers who are turned off by the messaging. And so the first thing to understand is, what are the risks that you personally and your organization are taking? And understand, how does that manifest itself through policy? So the first session will just get you grounded. We're going to orient ourselves to what is policy, how does it manifest itself, what are other organizations doing? That's all I do all day in and out. I work with large organizations, I work with small organizations, and everything in between in every industry. I'm going to be able to share use cases with you. I'm going to actually teach you what matters, what doesn't, and how other people get this done in their environments. From there, we're going to actually move into our second session, where we're going to very much focus on taking a look at your specific environment. One of the key criteria when deciding to do this masterclass was, can I give you enough one-on-one attention and enough of a personalized experience to enjoy and benefit from this masterclass? And the answer is yes. We're limiting the number of people to 20 who can participate, because what we're doing is, in session 2, we're doing a deep dive. We're looking at you and your organization, who you are, the industry you're in, the geographical areas where you operate. We're looking specifically at you, and together we're going to do an audit. We're going to go back and take a look at, what have you done to identify the risks associated with digital marketing, selling, entertaining new prospects in the local market, reaching out to new leads? What policies do you have in place today versus what ought you to consider in order to close those gaps? So the first thing we're doing is understanding what the map looks like. Where are you weak? Where are you strong? And where can we support you to get this job done? And that, of course, is going to set us up really nicely for our last session, which is really about creating localization policies. This is where we roll up our sleeves and we get to work. We're actually going to write policies together. Because what we want you to do is, we want you to come to this workshop. We certainly want you to learn, but we also want you to go back to the office and be able to show, hey, here's what I've done in this time. We basically want you to be working, which doesn't sound all that exciting, but it will be, I promise. We want you to be working in this class, and we want you to be able to have enough takeaways for you to say, gosh, good investment of my time. And we want your boss to be really excited about what you've done for the organization as you come back to work. So again, very important. We get you educated. We get you set up with the terminology, understanding the lay of the land. We help you do the digital policy audit. And from there, we step into actually creating policies where you will learn the skill and won't have to be reliant on consultants such as myself. Now, it's not all fun and games all the time, right? We do actually have to learn things like, What are the details around what's important and not important? And so when we get into the organizational view of you and your organization in session one, we're going to dig deep. I'm not just going to talk about, well, should you have a privacy policy or not? Of course, I'm going to ask you that question. But I'm going to talk a lot about governance. I'm going to talk about how this works in other organizations, from how do you gather information on what you should and shouldn't be doing out there? How do you document the policies? What does the life cycle look like for managing those policies? And what are the best practices in the industry? Who does it well? Where do organizations fail? And what are the risks? You'll get to learn all of that. And I'll also give you really helpful tips on how to get approval, create repository, and do the meaningful work that you need in order to get to global digital policies. So all of that is coming out of session one, a lot to learn and a lot to focus on. Again, for session two, we're doing a policy audit. This on your screen is just an example of some of the policies that you may have, might not have, may need, or may not. The key is that most people don't think about this day in and day out because you're busy. You're busy creating new content. You're busy working with that translator in order to get the content localized appropriately. You're worried about getting the next report to your marketing director. And the last thing you're thinking about is, do I need to do anything about data localization? Or what about this digital records management thing, right? Nobody thinks about that over a coffee break, which is why we're going to think about that in the session and make sure that you are covered end to end on the things you should know, and the things that you don't know, we're going to actually help enable you to go back to the organization and ask. So I'll be providing a lot of the framework. I'll actually give you the methodology. You're going to have to do the legwork, but together we're going to partner and we're going to get this done. And that, of course, is where that last piece comes in around the creation of localization policies. To me, this is exciting because, again, it's not just about documentation. It's about bringing to life policies. So yes, we'll actually do documentation because you need to do some documentation. But the last session, we're focused on not just how to write policies. We're focused on how do you actually get those disseminated in the organization? How do you get people to comply with a policy? How do you adopt this? How does it become a living, breathing thing to enable every single digital marketing campaign so you never have to think about it again? We're going to get through all of that in this last session, really focusing on the tactics so you can make a difference when you're back at work. Whether or not you're in charge of policies or not, this will enable you to actually get your job done faster, easier, and work with colleagues without conflict, which is probably something that you run into a lot today. Now, it wouldn't be a fun masterclass unless we got to even go further in terms of personalization. So between our sessions, I'm going to be holding office hours. You'll have, of course, a lot of personalized time in the masterclass sessions themselves. But if you have a very unique question to your organization, maybe you want to show me something that you've done previously and ask me a question about existing policies or a standard. Maybe you want me to check your audit one-on-one, or maybe you just want to play Stump the Consultant and ask me crazy questions. I'm going to have office hours for that. And so you'll be welcome to come into the office hours, spend time with me, ask any questions you have that are on your mind, reinforce your skills, and really just take advantage of my experience. Nothing's off limits, and I'm here as a resource to you between those sessions. I want to make sure that you're successful. So please know that you'll be supported throughout this event, across this journey. And it's more than just master classes. It's also access to me and thought leadership in addition to those classes that we're going to be holding together. So what's going to happen next? You should definitely sign up if you haven't. Alex actually can get you additional information on doing that. But personally, I'm getting ready to roll up my sleeves and I'm getting ready to start the next session with you. So I hope you're going to join me on this journey. I'm looking forward to it. I can guarantee it's going to be a little bit of a geek fest, but a lot more fun. And as Alex can attest, I think we've had people get excited about policies in the past. So I hope we're going to continue that trend now.
Well, thank you very much, Kristina. That was a great overview. Just on behalf of the Localization Institute, I'm I'm so proud and excited to be producing this new masterclass with you, and I think it's going to be really great and valuable for our students. So we really appreciate you taking the time to record this webinar with us today. It's going to be available for people to review on the course website. Again, I want to say out there, if you have any questions about the masterclass at all, please don't hesitate to email me at alex@localizationinstitute.com. Again, you can find much more about the course, including a breakdown of the various sessions and the content that will be included, and also some key takeaways that you'll have when you leave the course. That's available on our website at localizationinstitute.com. So Kristina, again, thank you very much for your time today, and very excited for the first session on November 5th.
Thanks so much, Alex. I'm excited to get started.
All right, thank you. Have a great day.
Bye.
Bye-bye.